Jefferson once said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Don't remain silent. You just jumped into the Pickle Barrel with author, speaker, commentator, and show host, Bill Pickle.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Hey, it is a beautiful day here in South Kakalaki, a.k.a. South Carolina. I tell you what, we had another series of storms come through last night. You know, I just need to turn on the recorder to say that. You know, we had another storm last night. We had another storm last night. We had another storm. You know, I don't think we've gone more than 2 days in the last 6 weeks that we didn't have a real good shower to a storm. I mean, it has been wet. It's making the grass grow. I'm having to mow the yard more than once a week. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff because of that. Got to go out and clean out my smoker today because I got to smoke some butt tomorrow. My wife had a birthday yesterday. Oh, I did good. I did good. So anyway, I told her I'd smoke her a pork butt and some pork and beans and stuff like that to continue the celebration this weekend. So we're going to do that, and I'd like to invite you, but you wouldn't be able to come, so sorry. Anyway, glad to have you here in the Pickle Barrel, though, this morning. We do have a lot of things to talk about. You know, we had some discussions yesterday about defense, about war, about all of that, and guess what, folks? I wasn't finished. So we're going to talk about it some more today, but we do have some other things we're going to talk about also. And what I'd like to do is have you get in touch with your friends and neighbors and tell them to jump in here with us this morning. And there are several ways you can do that. One, they can actually call in, which now I'm going to repeat this as the number 312 probably. They can call in and take part in the conversations just like I hope you do. At 712-770-4160, and then put in that magic PIN number. You know, you got to have that little code, you know, to get in there. It's 263-151#. And then you can listen there until you get ready to talk. But if you get ready to talk, all you got to do is hit *6. You're there. You're on air. The whole world can hear your lovely voice and your opinions. And so the only thing I ask on this program is, you know, kind of curtail, you know, the vulgarity, you know, the hate, gotta get you stuff. Don't really go for that too much. We like to have some good discussions and back and forth with a little bit of manners and respect. You know what I mean? I hope you do. All right. So, also, you can join us in the chat room at American Patriot Radio. You can go over there, join the group, folks. That way you're up to date on everything that's going on at American Patriot Radio. You have access to all the programming. And believe me, as great as I am, I mean, ask me, as great as I am, there are other shows on American Patriot Radio you might enjoy listening to and watching. No, seriously, we got a great lineup all day long, and we'll go more into that later. And we got our producer here, Dave. He's going to bring you up to date on everything we got later. But so those are just some of the things we've got. Also, right here on Facebook Live, we got a little chat room there. You can write a comment. Matter of fact, I want to show you here. I'm going to go here right now. I'm going to hit write a comment and say, thanks for joining us in the Pickle, Barrel, barrel. See how easy that was? It's very easy. We hope you'll do it. All right, let's get started here. We're going to talk a little bit, a very little bit this morning about things that might have happened or did happen in this day in history. Not as much as usual. I got a lot to talk about this morning, so you're lucky you get off easy this morning. Okay, let's see here. Talk about lone wars. You know, Russia, 1582, they ended a 25-year war with Poland. Now, folks, we've been in some long wars. We've occupied some countries for a long time, like North Korea and some other places. But, you know, a 25-year war, active war, is a long time. 1779, Louis the 16th of France frees the last remaining serfs of royal land. Last remaining serfs. You know, some people would call those people slaves, you know. Some would. 1831, William Driver of Salem, Massachusetts is the first to use the term Old Glory in the connection with the American flag when he gives that name to a large flag aboard his ship, the Charles Daggett. Old Glory. I still love that name, and I still love that flag. Got one flying on my front porch. Somebody asked me, it was a Facebook survey a couple of days ago. You know, these things they send out and hoping people buy them. I did. They said, would you fly the American flag on your front porch? And most everybody said, yes, 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 hell yes, things like that. And I put on there, not only will I, but I have as long as I can remember breathing air as an adult. I don't care where I've lived, I've had that flag on my front porch and proud of it. Smithsonian Institute is established in Washington, D.C. through the bequest of James Smithson, 1846. 1864, Confederate General John Bell Hood sends his cavalry north of Atlanta to cut off Sherman's troops in his supply lines. Did not work too well, because they came right on up through Atlanta, right over the state line into South Carolina, right up to our capital, and, they just bombed the devil out of it with those cannon. Burned down the First Baptist Church, they thought. Some of you that's been here a while know this story, but I'm going to repeat it. He came into town. Some major, I'm not sure what his name was, came into town and asked this guy standing downtown, where's the First Baptist Church? And the guy told him right down there on the corner. He goes down there and burns it to the ground. The only thing is, the guy that told him where it was from the First Baptist Church, and he sent him to the Methodist Church. First Baptist Church still stands. They got a new church, though, for the Methodists. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Let's see here. President Harry S. Truman calls the National Guard to active duty to fight in the Korean War, 1950. And let's see here. David Frost, 1975, purchases exclusive rights to interview Richard Nixon. Those are a few things that happened on this day in history. Some of the people born on this day. Edmund Jennings Randolph, governor of Virginia and first U.S. Attorney General, was born in 1753. Herbert Hoover, 31st President of the United States from 1929 to 1933, was born in 1874. George W. Crockett, first African-American lawyer with the U.S. Department of Labor, 1909. Eddie Fisher, God, boy, that guy could sing. I still like that old music. I really do. He was born in 1928, and Jimmy Dean, I remember from last year talking about this. Funny how some things you remember. Jimmy Dean was born on this date also, but I don't remember exactly what year. It was in the 20s, though, late 20s, 28, 29. Okay, let's see here. Harriet Myers, White House counsel, was born in 1945. And those are just a few of the things that of people and things that happened on this day in history. Let's talk about the history we're making today. Oh, gosh, let's see here. First, let's check the chat room and see what's going on there. So far, no chat going on. All right, that leaves me more time to talk, doesn't it? Now I go. Listen, I want to hear from y'all. Get in there and chat. Okay. First thing, I want to say hoorah, hooray, and whatever to the U.S. Army. You know, there is this big push in Brooklyn, New York. U.S. Representative Yvette Clarke had vowed to keep fighting and get the American flag, get the Army there at the New York City's Fort Hamilton, trying to get them to remove a plaque, a monument that was in the fort there. And the Army said, no, we're not going to do it. Yes, we are the U.S. Army. We may be in Yankee, New York, but guess what? History took place here, and we're going to remember the history that took place here with honor. Well, hallelujah. You know, General, you need to run for president. I might vote for you. You're a man of honor. I appreciate that. You know, the plaque marks a tree that was planted there by General Robert E. Lee, and at the time it was on the grounds of the St. John's Episcopal Church in Brooklyn Borough of New York. The plaque marking the tree is still there, and it's going to remain there. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. A man of integrity and honor. Remember history, respect those that served. You know, she vowed to keep fighting the Army on this, and she says she's not going to give up. And, you know, a little history here. General Lee Avenue crosses Stonewall Jackson right there. And, you know, those two names play a vital part in our history, whether you like it or not. And, you know, as the general put it, he said, representing an inextricable part of our military history, and wrote in response to Miss Clarke, who received a letter over the weekend. The New York News reported. And you know what? This actually took place in June. Okay. So, you know, this is not like it was yesterday. It was the last week in June this actually took place. But I just getting around talking about it. But Diane Randon, the Army's acting assistant chief of staff for installation management, reportedly wrote that the streets were named in the spirit of reconciliation, and that any effort to rename them would be controversial and divisive. And we are not going to put up with that. She didn't say that. I included that. She said the department claims that the streets were named in the spirit of reconciliation. But, of course, you know, she ignored, this is what's being said, she ignored the interest of the African Americans and enforced white supremacy, effectively denying the department describes any possibility of renaming these streets as potentially controversial. And of course, they are saying that's a bunch of nonsense. Miss Clarke repeated herself and has several times since then. I've actually seen her on a little news clip the other day saying this, and I'm so glad I stumbled across this article, that she and everybody in the area was deeply offensive to Brooklyn residents, and that they should have left the past die where it died. Well, on you. Here's the letter she wrote. I did find a copy of the statement that came out. Brooklyn, New York. Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke released the following statement on the refusal of the Army to consider renaming two streets. Anyway, she was joined by Congressman Gerald Nadler, Vasquez, Jeffries, formally asking the department to rename the streets, okay? And here's her statement when it didn't happen. I am disappointed that the Department of Army will not even consider renaming these streets, honoring Confederate generals who waged war against the United States. The department claims that the streets were named in the spirit of reconciliation. But that reconciliation was actually complicity by the North and the South to ignore the interest of the African Americans and enforce white supremacy. Mercy. Effectively denying the result of the Civil War for generations. Personal opinion. We are still living with the failure of this nation to fully accept that result, as well as the post-Civil War amendments that were ratified to establish the freedom of women and men who had been held in bondage. The department describes any possibility of renaming of these streets as potentially controversial. Nonsense. These monuments are deeply offensive to the hundreds of thousands of Brooklyn residents and members of the armed forces stationed at Fort Hamilton, whose ancestors, Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, fought to hold into slavery. For too many years, the United States has refused to reckon with that history. I commend the city of New Orleans for initiating this important and often difficult work. I will continue to petition the Department of Army to continue that effort. Yada, 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 yada. I think there's probably many more things out there, young lady, that you need to be addressing in Congress besides this BS. Personal opinion. You know, as everyone knows, I'm a lover of history. You can't change history. You can't hide history. All you can do is displace some of the relics from history, and that in itself should be a crime. It should be a crime. And as far as the thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Brooklyn that hate that sign, how about the thousands and thousands and thousands and even more that didn't even know the friggin' thing existed until you brought it up? Now it's a tourist oddity. And next time we're in New York, which won't be that long from now, I am going to make myself a trip down to Brooklyn, and I'm going to try to find that plaque and take my picture right beside that plaque and flaunt it in your face. Darn, feeling kind of hateful this morning. Feeling kind of hateful this morning. Oh, Lordy. Well, I'm glad to have y'all here. Glad to have y'all here. Okay, now we got some chat in the chat room. Let's see here. If you don't use the storm days off, they get out early, which has been the call. Boy, I tell you what, it has, hasn't it? Why do we have Martin Luther King days and roads if the past should die and not be remembered? Touche, Neil. Good one. One thing okay, this is Dave. One thing I never understood is how many dang early release dates they get when they get out as 2 hours early. Okay. Neil says, how do we want to remember getting over prejudice, but not the people that fought for or against it always thought a year-long school was okay. And, okay, we're talking about school departures. All right, good. All right. Okay, so that is one issue. Another one. I want to compliment Nikki Haley. Yes, Candy mentioned that I like Nikki Haley. I have been a fan of Nikki Haley even before she ran for governor the first time around, and she was reelected the second time around. I've been a good friend of Nikki Haley. Been a while since I've talked to her, since she's been in New York City there. I did call and let them know, though, my wife and I would be up there in a couple of months, and I'd love to stop by and say hello. Hopefully I can do that. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, Nikki Haley, although controversial, I'm not going to get away from that. Every politician is controversial with someone. Okay? Nikki Haley had a habit of standing up what she thought was right. Imagine that. People still do that sometimes, don't they? They still do that sometimes. And she had a very good habit of doing that. When Trump was running for president, if you remember correctly, her and Donald Trump were not exactly the best of buddies. She campaigned very hard against him. She did take some slaps, not literally, figuratively. She took some slaps from a bunch of people here in South Carolina because of her stance about Donald Trump. No secret. Very loud and boisterous. But guess what? For some reason, some say for payback, for pretending to be against him, that's a shaky leaf you're going on there when you say that. Some say it was a action to bring the party back together. Yeah, I don't know about that. But either way, whatever the reason, she was put into United Nations. Smart move, President Trump. I think it was one of the best moves he's made. And right now, you can ask several people who's the shining star, who's the superstar, who's got the most positive press so far in his cabinet and his people that he's put into different positions. Nikki Haley's name comes up more often than anyone. She's been very vocal up there in the UN. She's been in several different positions so far, as they rotate. She's been in several of those. And she's doing what everyone I can talk to that has regarded her actions as an ambassador to the UN as being very good. Outstanding, one person told me. People talk about his recruiting skills, the ability for him to recruit good people. And so far, this one ain't gone. This one ain't gone. This one ain't gone. Oh, staff too. Ain't gone. Ain't gone. Nikki Haley. Check mark. Still there. Still alive and well. Running full steam. That should tell you something. I would say without a doubt, working in Donald Trump's administration so far, it appears to me that you got to have a lot of stamina. You got to have some guts. You got to have some concrete slabs with your feet in them when they were poured to hold you down in the ground so he can't blow you out of there. But, Nikki Haley. Yes, I'm praising Nikki Haley. I'm not going to quit yet. When she makes her mind up to do something, she gets it done. She doesn't care, what you think about her. It's the task at hand. If it needs to be done, she's going to do her best to get it done. She took on a lot of hard-nosed senators and House members here in South Carolina. And some of them are no longer in office. Some of them have been dismissed in shame. And some of them just wishing and hoping they can finish their careers as state legislators before they're slammed in the ground. But she is still churning and burning. Serving in this administration takes a lot of devotion. And, you got two people right now that I have to hand them a thumbs up. And, you know, I don't care what you think about them. That's your opinion. And I've got my opinion about them too. And one of them in particular is kind of shaky, but either way, Nikki Haley and Sessions, those two right now are in the highlight of that administration as far as their positions more than anybody else. And Sessions is taking all kinds of shots. He's had arrows shot at him so many times it's unreal. And no matter what you think about him, I think the guy is very intelligent. I think he's strong. I think he knows what he's doing. And I think they ought to leave him alone, let him do his job. After all, that's why he was put in there. Okay? Personal opinion. Nikki Haley, you're leaving her alone, and look what she's doing. Doing great. So, anyway, she took the lead in persuading China and Russia to join sanctions on North Korea, all to persuade Kim Jong-un to think again about his boastful threat to ignite World War II. You know, he's still at it. After some of the comments that Trump made, it just reignited that flame, and he's still going with it. But guess what? She's not backing down. She's not backing down. You know, another president did the same thing. Woodrow Wilson, you know, back in the 50s. He made the comment that such a catastrophe might at last be the war to end the war. He said that about World War I. Never happened. That wasn't the war to end all wars, was it? God darn, how many have we had since then? And, you know, I think Kim Jong-un, or however you want to say it, Kim, that's what I'm just going to call him. He's an arrogant son of a gun, isn't he? He's an arrogant son of a gun. I mean, he is so arrogant. He is so out there. He is so I want to use the exuberant, but that may be giving him a compliment. But I got to use it. I can't think of any better word. He's so exuberant about what he says and what he says he's going to do. You can't help but think this guy may actually be crazy enough to do it. I mean, he's like in the backyard playing in a sand box. You know, oh, look at this little missile here. Woo! Yeah, just throw it up there and let it go. In case you didn't see it, I just threw my pencil up in the roof and it came back down and almost stabbed me. But my exuberance. But, you know, Nikki Haley used exactly what he said, word for word, and brought it to the UN and used it to win approval of the United Nations Resolution 2371, which she calls the single largest economic package ever leveled against the North Korean regime and the most stringent set of sanctions on any country in a generation. Touché, Kim Jong-un. You know, if enforced, and a big if there, because you know how these things kind of play circles, burn out, or whatever, but if it does continue as written, you know, you're going to be looking at about $3 billion, $3 billion with a B, revenue lost from exports of coal and minerals, which are the two biggest exports from North Korea. And, you know, losing that kind of money, I wonder how he's going to pay for those nuclear missiles and warheads. You know, I thank you, Nikki Haley. I want to get off of you here, but I want to thank you for what you're doing. Keep it up, and look forward to seeing you. You know, I can remember, before I go, I can remember back during the campaign when Nikki was bad-mouthing Trump. And I remember very clearly, matter of fact, I don't have to remember it. I've got it written down right here so I wouldn't forget. He had, of course, Twitter attack against her. The people of South Carolina are embarrassed by Nikki Haley. Nope. Not quite, sir. Not quite, sir. You know, someone asked her the other day whether she had to twist arms to bring Russia and China along on this sanctions thing, and she replied with just one word. One word. Lots. In other words, she had to put a lot of pressure on them, but they did it. But they did it. Thank you, Nikki Haley. Keep up the good work. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Okay, let's take another look at the chat room. Hot air is the biggest export. Not true. It's $1 billion out of his $3 billion of exports. Well, that's a third. How'd you like to have a third of your bank account gone? I was joking about Guam being a high value target, man. Okay. All right. So anyway, I hope she keeps up the good work, and I hope Trump leaves her alone, let her do her job. Okay. Yesterday, we were talking about war. We were talking about wasting money. We were talking about how we intrude on other countries all the time, always have, probably always will was the name of the game yesterday. And we were asking, I asked the question, war, what is it good for? Is war ever good? And we got into it a little bit, but not quite as much as I wanted to. And then I want to ask the question, is it sometimes necessary? You know, it's not a matter of whether war is good or bad so much as whether or not is it necessary. And just about everything else we're involved in and everything else we do in our life, you know, we have to ask our questions that. You know, I know that my wife and I travel. And, you know, we decide sometimes if we want to travel, what we need to give up, what we need to sacrifice so we can have the money and the time to do these trips. Well, you know, that's a decision you have to make just about every day of your life. You know, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? Should I do it? What do I have to do to allow myself the ability to do it? Or what do I have to give up not to do it? You know, those are decisions we have to make, even in war. And, you know, let's face it, you know, war is ugly. War is not something that we should enjoy doing. And I think personally that if there's any way possible, we need to avoid war. But at the same time, I do think war is necessary at times. At times. I want to go back in history. We've talked a little bit about this before, but I want to go back to the war between the states, the Civil War. Was that war necessary? Depends on who you talk to. What caused that war? Oh, Lordy, does that depend on who you talk to? You know, you can watch the History Channel. You can watch all these educational TV channels, and they say this, they say that. But, you know, I was watching one a few weeks ago. I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it was talking about the Civil War. And what the Civil War was about, the war between the states. Ultimately, now this is my humble opinion, and I know a lot of people will agree with me, and some will disagree, but I know a lot that agree. Even those Yankees up north, some of the Yankees up north that I know agree with me. The war was not about slavery. It was not about slavery. Now, slavery was a mix in the reason. It was part of the, it was part of the basket that we were fighting for in the South. All right, now I'm trying to get layman's terms here very clear and simple. It was part of the basket of reasons why we were fighting. Was it for slavery itself, or was it about the states' rights to govern their own state? In my humble opinion, the war was about individual states' rights. Constitution says states their own little bivouac, that we have the right, people have the right to govern themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can go wherever direction you want to on that. But in my humble opinion, that is what the war was about. And Ken, you're right. I was taught slavery was about the 8th on the list. I do not have that list with me. I wish I did. By a black teacher. There you go. But slavery was not at the top. It wasn't number one. It wasn't even at the top. And thank you for saying that, Ken. I appreciate you sharing that comment. Woke me up too. I think that people forget it was about, each individual state. We all have our own constitution. We have our own constitution. Our senators, state senators, our state reps, our county sheriffs, all take a pledge to uphold the Constitution of South Carolina. They swear to support and defend the Constitution of the South Carolina. And the United States of America, although it's not written, they're saying, except when it superimposes itself over the state of South Carolina. You see, folks, we've talked about this many times. This country is made up of 50 countries, the states, United States. Each individual state is a country of its own. We came together and formed a more perfect union. You ever heard the term European Union? More perfect union to work together on certain projects like infrastructure, defense, I'm sure you've heard of those things. And so that war, although it was terrible, and you've heard us talk about it several times on American Patriot Radio. And Dave, our expert on everything, is right when he says this war is still not over, because 14th Amendment never has, we're still under martial law, technically. People won't admit that, but we are. But the bottom line is, we're still part of the United States of America, the greatest union on this earth, my humble opinion. So, war is a very, very big challenge. It is. You got to think about the lives that are involved. You got to think about the morality of it. Some wars I consider to be moral, like the war between the states. I think that was a moral war. Some wars are not. They're not. I think there are several things that you got to look at when you're talking about war and the causes of war. And you know, in all through history, you can look at these and find these examples. You know, you've got the religious wars. Okay. You know, what makes one religion think they're so much better than the other? That their God says, I am God. These people over here, my God is God. These people over here, my God is God. You know, just like politics, believe it or not, just like politics where majority of the people are in the middle and these extremists on either side, even in religion. If you look at religion, there are so many things that are the same within each religion. It's unreal. Yes, they do have those differences. And yes, those are the things that rip them apart, just like it ripped our country apart and still rips our country apart. It's those differences that people concentrate on, not the things that could bind us together. It's a challenging situation. It's a challenging moral issue. Not counting the money that's involved. Holy moly. You know, activism. If you believe in activism, you know, being part of something, taking action. I'm an activist. I'll admit it. I'm a semi-passive activist, okay? It takes a lot to get me over that hump. But when I'm over that hump and feel like I am really right, and I feel like I need to stand up to whatever the situation is, by gosh, you can't pull me back. You can't pull me back. You know, oh boy, I know there's some congressmen and senators and state reps and state senators that wish they would not hear from me. I know that for a fact. A couple of them don't even take my personal calls anymore, but they'll have somebody call me back at least and say, the senator this, senator that. In other words, I'm getting the brush off, but still I get my words into them. Selectivism. Now, that's a word that pops in mind to me when we start talking about war. I think we need to be selective when it comes to making that jump. We need to weigh the good, the bad, the advantages and disadvantages. And they do, folks. They do. Believe me, most people do that. But do they do it with sincerity? Do they do it with sincerity? You know, yesterday, Brian, a frequent caller, called in. We were talking about this. And, you know, we were talking about the justice and the morality of it. And was there such a reason to have war? And yes, there are. I sincerely do believe they are.
Good morning, Bill.
Hey, Brian, speaking of the devil, oh, not really. I didn't mean to call you the devil, Brian. You know what I meant. Speaking of Brian, let me finish this comment and I'm gonna get right back with you, okay? There's two things here I want to bring up real quick, and then I'm gonna get Brian in here and we'll talk about it. You know, we talked about a just war, and I think you got to talk about justice in war. All right. Now, when you're talking about a just war, you know, I think that a just war is something that has to be waged by a legitimate authority, whether it be a state, the federal government. But, you know, those are the ones I think we have to say, quote unquote, just war. I think war should be the last ditch effort to solve issues. War is terrible. Terrible. You can look at our history, look at the South, and see what that war did to us. We're still recuperating, trying to. We're still being held down. Hey, you got to admit it, folks. You got to understand. I think we are to be able to show that there's a moral compass that led us into that war. Should you fight a war knowing you're going to win, folks? I think you better think twice about that. I think we need to have a pretty good probability that we're going to come out on top. And it's got to be a just cause. And, folks, I want to tell you something. Someone that was listening to the show yesterday, after the show, they went back and listened to it, by the way, which I'm glad they did. Thank you for doing that. Defense of innocence and freedom against aggression, to me, is a just cause. We've been there. We've been there. Back in the 1700s and back in the 1800s for the South. What is the purpose of the war? What is the intent? What are you looking to do? What are you trying to accomplish? I think that, actually war can be fought to establish peace. It really can. I mean, United States of America got involved in the war in Europe in World War I and World War II. Why? First, to save those people under aggression, and also to bring about peace. Good example right there. Intent should not be just for the sake of destroying the enemy. That's the reason I say with this thing with North Korea, we got to pay attention what we're doing. We got to look at the reality of things. What are the good sides, the bad sides? And I hope Donald Trump will do just that. And those that are around him. One of the things in war, you got to have justice. You got to have the moral upside. You got to have strategy. You got to have tactics. How do I explain a just war? How about, okay, let's talk about Korea. A terror like you've never seen before in history. Is that a just response? Is that a just response? There's a lot of citizens in North Korea that probably wish their president would shut up. I bet we're not alone in some of our citizens, good number of our citizens, probably in both countries. Of course, here we can say it. In North Korea, you can't say it. Is it a just war to go there and blow that nation, the kingdom come, the innocent people, men, women, children? That's something you got to consider, in my humble opinion. You got to consider the non-combatants. You got to consider the civilians. You got to consider all of that. But yes, I will tell you this. I still stand by my conviction that I think war is sometimes necessary, but with caution. Brian, so sorry, sir. I wanted to finish that comment and everything before I got to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. My feeling on war is that, every country has the right to defend itself. I've never considered myself a pacifist or a non-interventionist. I like to think of myself as a foreign policy realist. I do believe that the majority of wars that we've been in either were completely unnecessary or shouldn't have been necessary, but circumstances eventually made it such. But I think most of the wars we've been in, I think, in my opinion, were not necessary.
Okay. I would probably agree with you, but, how long, we sat behind and watched these wars for, it started in Germany, and France and England and Poland in the 30s. We didn't get into it until 42. After, 41, 42.
We had Lend-Lease, though.
I'm sorry?
Which saved
we had Lend-Lease. Yeah.
Which saved the British and the Russians.
Right.
That they would have folded.
Right. And, so, we contributed, but we weren't, quote unquote, with war, but we did get there pretty quickly after that, didn't we?
True. Yeah. But what I would say is, my feeling about the run-up, I guess we're going to get off topic, but maybe it's a discussion worth having, is that, I feel that the blame for World War II, first off, I think it starts with World War I. I never felt, and the conventionalism at the time was that, why did America get involved in World War I? It was a bunch of empires shooting over more land. It was not, it was not like you had democracy, whatever that, versus fascism. It was a bunch of empires shooting over more land. Maybe the Germans were slightly more autocratic, but I think there was no good reason for America to get involved. And the years later, it was called Wilson's Folly. It's very unpopular. But out of that came the decimation of Germany with the reparations payments. They blamed them for the war and made them pay for the balance of it, even though the British wanted that more just as much as the Germans did, and they manipulated things behind the scenes to get that result. And, hey, as far as, Hitler, they could have stopped him at Munich. They could have stopped him in Czechoslovakia. Hitler's own generals thought it was so insane what Hitler was going to do that when they were going to go into Czechoslovakia, that if the Czechs put up any kind of a fight, Hitler's own generals were considering arresting him because they thought it was a suicide mission because the terrain was very unfavorable. But you had that whole thing at Munich and the appeasement, and so instead of blaming the United States, I'd blame the British and France because if they'd stood up there, they could have stopped and given the Czechs the green light to defend themselves. They could have nipped everything in the bud. So I blame the Europeans more. I'd also blame a lot of the banks and the major businesses in Europe and the United States that were, greatly contributing to the financially to the stability of Germany and to their rearmament. And there were a host of big corporations on Wall Street that were funding the Third Reich. Now, I do believe that conditions made it such that America had to intervene at a certain point, but there were any number of things that if they hadn't happened in the lead up to World War II, World War II would have never happened. So, I agree. But eventually it reached a point where I think the United States had to get involved, but, there are a lot of things, boy, if you hadn't had all these major corporations trading with the Third Reich, for example, IBM, did business with the Third Reich, and there was a great book called IBM and the Holocaust, and they helped come up with a complicated system to track all the Jews in Germany and Eastern Europe. You had Rockefeller Standard Oil, supplying the Third Reich with a lot of their energy needs. Hey, if you want to go to war with another country, you can't do that unless you have an abundant supply of energy.
Exactly.
It's a lot more complicated than to just say that, well, America should have gotten involved sooner or they were isolationists like the John McCain say. That really is not accurate at all.
Okay, I agree. I can see that. All right, Brian. Again, guy, I'm sorry. We're at the top of the hour. Got to take this break, but it's going to be a short one. And we're right here where I can switch a little bit the direction here. So let's go ahead and take a real quick break. Dave, let's take about a 2-minute break or so here. and we'll be right back here in the Pickle Barrel. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to pick up your phone, your iPhone, or your computer, whatever you're going to be using, and dial 712-770-4160. Then put in the PIN number 263151#. And then when we get back from break, you can hit *6 and you'll be in the queue, and you can jump in here, you, me, Brian, and whoever else here in the chat room. We'll just have a roundtable discussion on this and other topics. Just kind of give you an idea here pretty quickly. We're going to be getting into Donald Trump and Homeland Security, how they're working together to get things done. We're going to be talking about the money that's being spent. We're going to be talking about the waste that all going into defense, the amount that's being wasted, and things like that. And hopefully we'll wrap up our discussion on defense, but it has been a deep topic. And so we're going to try to wrap that up and move on. So we'll be back here in just a couple of minutes here in the Pickle Barrel. We'll be right back.
That was D-Rock, everybody. You can follow him over there on Facebook at My D-Rock, and of course Twitter at D-Rock Country. Awesome job. We had him over there on Happy Hour the other day with Candy. Great interview. If you missed it, it will soon be archived and I believe up on YouTube as well. So you definitely want to check that out. That's D-E-E Rock. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Candy, this morning, Coffee with Candy, I called in and told her what a great show that was, Dave, with D-Rock. I mean, it was absolutely wonderful. One of the most motivating, uplifting shows I've heard in a long time. And my hat off to her again. Ooh, look at the glare. That's the reason I wear it. See how that glare, it kind of blocks everything out, don't it? But anyway, it was a wonderful show, and I would like to listen to him some more and listen to some more of his music. But anyway, thank all of you for being here. Thank you for being back in the Pickle Barrel this morning. And I wish we could just get out of it and stay out of it, but there's so much rigmarole and going on that we're going to be here for a long, long time. But we got Brian on the phone. Let's get back to Brian. Folks, if y'all would like to come in here and take part, I'm going to give you the phone number one more time real slowly. 712-770-4160. Then you'll get the PIN number signals as enter. Okay, you put in 263151, then the pound sign. You get ready to talk, hit *6, you're in. And we'd love to have you in our little round tables. Brian, I'm sorry, sir. We just happened to catch the top of the hour again. So the floor is yours. Dave, is he gone?
Nope, he's still on the line.
Okay. Well, he may be on another call or something. We'll go ahead and continue. Okay.
Bill?
Yes, Brian. Good morning again.
Yeah, so just as something I was saying before the break. I have a lot of problems with our foreign policy. I think it's only going to change, though, if we change our ideas about what America should be. If the belief is that we should be able to impose hegemony on the rest of the world, things aren't going to change, or spread democracy. If you look at it from more of a benevolent standpoint, then nothing's going to really change. I think if we looked at ourselves from more of a nationalist standpoint and looked at ourselves more as a country rather than an empire,
right?
That has, then I think we'd be much better off, and we'd be in much fewer wars. We'd still have problems because, every country is going to look out for what they perceive to be their best interest, but that's normal.
Do you? So you think that we are not the country, the United States of America, we're trying to be the empire of America?
I think a lot of people that run the country have this. They've had this for really since maybe the 40s, but
Mm-hmm.
it's become the predominant thinking since the collapse of the Soviet Union that we should have we should try to impose our will on the rest of the world.
Let me ask you
I mean,
this.
look, you can, yeah.
Do
I'm
you?
not saying the average American feels that way, but I'm saying the decision makers in Washington, and a lot of them have been quite open about it. I'm not saying anything they haven't been open about.
Yeah. Do you think that our involvement in NATO and the UN, different organizations like that have helped generate the idea that we may consider ourselves an empire?
I think in a lot of ways, yeah. Yeah, I do. Especially, it's just hard to justify NATO because NATO was created, during a period of time when Europe was weak coming off of World War II, and when you had the Soviet Union collapsed almost 27 years ago. So it's hard to justify an anti-Russian military alliance, especially when those European countries are more than capable of providing for their own military defense.
Well, some people have told me that they think our involvement in the UN has contributed to that also. But then I argue back, well, it's funny. Well, you know what? Stop and think about it. Which countries have veto powers?
Yeah, there you go. I don't know which all countries. I know America is one of them.
China, Russia.
Yeah.
Makes you think.
Right. Well, the thing is, if it was just an organization where you could try to hash out disputes and try to keep the peace, who could argue against it? But that was never the intent of the UN. And as we've seen, the UN's talked about over the years trying to impose and collect taxes. You have the UN Small Arms Treaty. So the problem I have with it is when it gets in the way of individual sovereign nations making their own decisions. But that was the whole, intent from the start. The intent was not to just have a means of which countries could work out disputes, maybe have other people mediate them. Right. So.
Oh, okay.
But again, yeah. I just think the goals should be much more humble and more realistic. Again, I just look at myself as a foreign policy realist, not a pacifist, not a non-interventionist. I just think we need a healthy degree of realism in terms of our foreign policy objectives and what's actually achievable.
Dave says that USA becoming the head of the had to become the head of the New World Order, and that by doing all these other organizations and all of our positions, that I'm trying to just summarize here, that's the reason we did that, because we had to be the head of the New World Order.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth there, but again, it's just Dave said this before. The New World Order is something new. It's just powerful countries that have people running powerful countries that have illusions of grandeur that want to basically impose their will on the rest of the world. That's your New World Order. And who's been leading it? Well, it's been led by the United States, definitely since the collapse of the British Empire in the 40s. There were people in the early 40s talking about it in the American century, because even as early as 41, 42, you could see that the British Empire wasn't what it was. And so the goal was by a lot of the patriarchs, people in power, that, the British Empire's declined and had its day, so America can replace them.
Yeah.
And that was what the whole American century thing they talked about was about. So, but yeah, it's nothing new. It's just this tendency towards overreach and hubris and arrogance and not learning from history. And I'm sure there will be other powerful countries, down the line, centuries from now, that'll have this, and people running them that will have the same delusions of grandeur that won't learn their lesson.
All right. Interesting. Well,
That's how I looked at it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There are so many different people look at this topic, Brian, that have their uneducated and educated opinions on it. And, sometimes it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say. But, you know, that's one thing I like about the discussions that we have here. I know some people think they're, well, you know, so. But, you know, these are deep topics. These are deep topics. And while we do mix a good number of amount of history, facts, we still have our own opinions about what's going on. And believe it or not, folks, it's the opinions of the American people and the action or inaction to support those opinions and wants that have also contributed to putting us in this pickle barrel. And the same thing be said about our politicians and those power mongers. You know, they've got the same thing going on in their minds, and they conflict with what we want. And that it all gels together and makes one big pickle jelly, don't it?
Yeah, and I think one of the things people that make the mistake with is that you hear that term New World Order, people roll their eyes like it's a conspiracy. And but you know, you've had people like George Bush Sr. that have openly talked about it, and Gary Hart and Henry Kissinger. And you know, it's based. The objective is no different than the objectives that empires throughout history have always had, and other countries that want to become empires in the future will have. And the mistake is
they have all had their part in making that new world order for that millennial or whatever, you know, or that century or 2 centuries or whatever. But
and the important reason to talk about this is because if you're not happy with the way things are going with our foreign policy and all the wars, well, but nothing's going to change unless the objectives change. So if the objective remains the same, which is world hegemony or spreading democracy throughout the world, then we're going to find ourselves in more of these wars, which usually lead to you know, lots of people getting killed, lots of money being spent, and regions of the world being destabilized. And if we can't even talk about these things and begin to understand them, then nothing's ever going to change.
All right.
It's not just positive.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about things that are changing. Let's talk about a little bit now about what has happened since Donald Trump has been president. And folks, get ready, because I'm fixing to compliment Donald Trump. Okay, in a roundabout way. Oh, Lord. You know, when Donald Trump was running for president, Homeland Security was the #1 issue he was running on. Homeland Security. You know, defense for this country. And, you know, I don't care what you think about Donald Trump. I don't care what you think about all of his text mailing. You couldn't think any less about it than I do. However, it has been a help to him. And but one thing you got to admit, since he's been president, I don't have the exact numbers here, but we've been seeing them change every report that comes out. The number of illegal aliens coming to this country is dropping. That's part of our national security, folks. I don't care what anyone says. That is part of our national security, is keeping our borders in check. And, you know, you got to give the man kudos. I don't know. It's not the wall that's done it, because wall's not there yet. But I think the fear of the wall, and who can get in and who can't get back out, you know, different things like that has a lot of influence on what's happening right now. I think that the new ability for the Border Patrol people, whether it be the agents, police, or whatever, sheriff's departments along the border, they have this renewed vigor to do their job because they've been encouraged to do their job. You know, that makes a big difference when you're encouraged and it's told, I want you to do your job. It is amazing what those two little things will do to someone's attitude. And I think that's what has taken place. And, this whole idea of making America great again, I'm going to tell you again, America is great. We just need some improvement. And we got this long way to go. And I think Donald Trump has made some big strides, although they're not getting the attention that probably they deserve. He's still out there making these strides and having success. I think that the ding dong, crazy, idiotic, careless, outright lying press that's out there, and believe me, it kills me to say that, but there are some out there. We got to admit it. And despite what they're doing, there still seems to be a real, sincere, solid progress toward at least making America safe again. And I think only through being safe again are we going to be able to maintain our greatness. And that's just a humble opinion there.
I would agree with that.
You would? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Wait a minute. I got to show fan off here, man. That got me going. Thank you. You excited me there, Brian.
Well, and I think that,
Lord.
I think in the long run, securing our borders and in the short run is much more important to our national security than what goes on in the Middle East. I mean,
amen, brother.
Otherwise, we could end up like Western Europe.
Amen.
And believe me, Italy's security and the security of Britain and France and Germany and Western Europe has much more to do, in my opinion, with whether or not they're going to at some point be willing to enforce their immigration laws and end the halt of economic migrants than whether or not, Assad is removed from power, or they drop bombs on Yemen or have sanctions on Iran or North Korea. I mean, look, if you want to take over a country, one of the ways to do it is it doesn't have to be through war; it's to take over their culture. And we're seeing that happen in Europe, and that's one of the reasons why I think it was so important that Trump win, because you'd at least have the chance of somebody coming in here and enforcing the immigration laws on the book and putting sensible immigration laws on the book that need to be there. Because it's insane to just say anybody that wants to come to your country can come in.
Mm-hmm.
That's just insanity.
Mm-hmm. I think
that was
so
the number
too.
one reason to vote for Trump.
Okay, I can go along with that. And I think that's very important. In the chat room, we got comments. To me, being great is back to a strong economy, a safe environment to raise my family, a good education for our kids. With this, USA is not great. Millennials have never seen any of this in their entire lives. I think that's too general of a statement, Neil. In honesty, I think some have, not all. I think that even in my generation, your generation, we had those that recognized and took advantage of the opportunities. And as I responded to you, I said, I think people must be willing and they must be able to take advantage of the opportunities that exist in this country. And believe it or not, although some of them may or may not have the education, they may or may not have the money that the rest of us have, there are still people out there in all socioeconomic statuses and people from different countries, immigrants, that have come here with little or nothing and made those opportunities. I think that is where I get more disappointed than anything in people, Neil, is that, they want to blame it on everybody except themselves. And I know too many people without a high school diploma that never went to college, that has handicaps, that have made it big because they did not let those other things bring them down. They said, by gosh, I am better. I want to be better. I'm going to be better, even if I have to do it myself. And I think that is something that we need to remember. I know day before yesterday, I ran into a child that I worked with when I was a guardian ad litem, and teenager. Well, almost not a teenager, but got her GED. She didn't go to high school. She went and got her GED. Did excellent. And she was telling me that she ranked in the top 10% on the SAT test. She's going to go to University of South Carolina. And that girl was smiling from ear to ear. Ear to ear. And I asked her, well, what are you going to do? She says, Mr. Bill, I'm not sure yet, but I tell you what, I'm motivated, and I'm going to make myself worth something. I could not ask for a better answer. She was honest. I mean, you first going in as a freshman in college, you really don't know what you're going to do. You may have some ideas, but she was honest and said, I am going to do it. I'm going to do something. I'm going to be successful. So just a comment. Brian, so, well, you're millennial, aren't you?
No, I'm Gen Xer.
Gen Xer, okay. Well, Gen X got a bad rap there for a while. Y'all were going to destroy our country. You remember that? Thank you for not doing so. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, and I could argue that, a lot of what's led our country down the wrong path has been policies implemented by baby boomers and greatest generation. So I think the way I look at it,
a lot of people call us greedy son of a guns, greedy and self-centered. You don't believe that, do you?
From that standpoint,
okay.
That, a lot of the this whole globalization thing was put in place by baby boomers like Bill Clinton and Bush and the rest of them. So, I don't know. I think there's a little bit of blood on your hands too. I look at the problem today where it's a combination of things. I think it's I think the work ethic is a problem. I think the victim culture is a problem. But I also think that I don't think we've had a real healthy booming economy in years. So I think it's an all the above approach. What I agree with you on is I think no matter what, you have to work hard.
You got to work hard.
Say that, well, I got to stack deck. The economy's not good. I'm a victim in some way, and I don't have a lot of patience for that.
Yeah, it is so much easier to cast blame than it is to work. It is so much easier. But you know what? Casting blame doesn't feed your mouth or get you an education or get you a job. It's that getting out there and working that does. You got to work to get that education. You got to work to get that job. You got to work when you get that job. And so it's right on down the line there. But, yes.
I think an important point, Bill, about the millennials is that, I don't see any of this stuff changing unless we really get a booming economy.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't get a booming economy, then all this, political correctness, social justice warrior stuff, victimology.
Well, Brian, it is. It's all about money. It's all about money. It's if the money's not there to hire you, you're not going to get hired. If you don't have the money to get the education that you want, you're not going to get that education. But it also couples that with motivation and determination. You put those three together, bingo, you're going to be to do something.
Right.
And you can't leave either one of them out. You got to have all three of them.
Got to have all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think there's never an excuse to not work as hard as you possibly can.
Yeah.
The best that you can be.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was in here last night. You know, I'm taking some FEMA classes. I'm up. Well, I'll talk about the reasons in the future. But I got to take some FEMA classes that I wasn't expecting to have to take. And I was in here from 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon until 10:30 last night online taking these classes. And I got, well, let's just put it this way. It'll take me probably 20 or more so days of doing just that to finish these classes I got to take. And, but you know what? I've got my reasons. I think it's a just cause. And by gosh, I'm sacrificing time. I'm sacrificing comfort, sleep to do it because I believe it's the good thing, the right thing to do. And I'll be proud when I'm finished. But, you know, the goal that I have in mind would not take place if I didn't commit to that achievement. And I think that's where we strive. Oh, that's where we die more than anything, Brian. You know, you sound like you're a successful young man. You know, I guess everybody just gave you everything you've got, right?
I do okay. I do okay. Look, I credit a lot of success to my parents.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, you mean your parents influenced your upbringing? Ooh, man.
Believe it or not.
Wow. I got to meet those guys. They must be pretty good people.
Yeah. And I, you know, gosh, I wish I was doing a lot better than I was, but I feel that I do pretty well. You know, I think a lot of times if you work hard, you're going to find out there's a lot less competition than you think there is. Because a lot of the competition's not working as hard as not going to work that hard.
Right, right.
And people say today with jobs, you know, just showing up is big because a lot of people won't do that. That's one of the eye-opening things to me. I just always took for granted if you're supposed to be somewhere at 7 o'clock, most people would be somewhere at 7 o'clock. You know, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. All right. I want to change gears here just a little bit. And this is back to defense, but it's on the dollars and cents. And some of the things, you know, we got this budget defense that defense budget everybody's been talking about and all that. And, you know, someone made a comment that when is too much defense? When is it too much defense, and when is it not enough defense? And too much defense spending for too little of defense. In other words, we're not getting our money's worth. And I found this letter, this article. This actually took place in April. And this came from Congressman Lamar Smith's office. He's in the 21st District of Texas. And this was one of his constituents. Now, this ends in the San Antonio area, okay? And this was a letter to him by one of his constituents. And I want to read this to you. And, you know, I think this is a good example of what we're facing in so many areas. And I want to read this to you because it's kind of detailed, and you'll need to listen to it to get the full picture. This was from a couple in San Antonio. It said, President Trump has promised to increase defense spending, but rather than increasing spending, we should first spend smarter. President Trump fixed wasteful spending in building the famous, wasteful spending in building the famous Wallman Ice Rink in Manhattan, which is a beautiful place. The rink was closed in 1980 for 2 years of renovations that were to cost $9 million. After the city spent $13 million over 6 years, Donald Trump volunteered to do the job. I remember seeing this too, by the way, when they did the ribbon cutting on it years ago. Anyway, he volunteered to do the job. He built a new rink to world-class standards for just over $2 million. And in only 2 months, by using simple business practices. Some people believe we are spending too much on defense, others not enough. Well, they are both right. Oh, imagine that. Both of them being right. God bless America. Someone agrees. Everybody can be right about something. Anyway, we are spending too much for too little in return. Lots of bureaucracy, red tape, but not much defense. My wife and I own a San Antonio-based engineering design company supporting the defense and commercial sectors. For a fraction of the cost of what our government normally pays, our company is often able to reverse engineer critical military parts, utilize new technologies using things such as 3D printing, drop the cost of manufacturing, and get products to the Department of Defense weapon systems much faster and certainly much less expensive than the large defense contractors. But government red tape often prevents us from doing so. Here's some examples of what they were talking about. An example is our 3D printed fan blade that cools the radar system on more than 20 B-52 Stratofortress bombers today. The Air Force did not have any technical data for the part. Using traditional manufacturing process, this part would have normally cost in excess of $10,000 to produce. By reverse engineering, utilizing newer technologies, 3D printing, we were able to drop the cost of manufacturing to just over $300 per fan blade. From $10,000 to $300. Folks, I don't care what you think about it, that is a huge savings. That was my comment. Many of large defense contractors are also the original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs. Their original contracts with the U.S. government, some dating 60 years old, did not provide for the transfer of design specifications and drawings to the government for replacement parts. As a result, such parts are enormously expensive. They went on to say that we are in discussions with one branch of the military to reverse engineer and have manufactured a small plastic switch that is connected to a firing grip on military helicopters. The OEME, you know, the big companies, requires that the entire grip be replaced at a cost of $18,000 each. We provide the design and have the production parts in large quantities made for about $8 each. However, more often than not, the bureaucracy spends so much time double and triple checking our costs, pricing profits, capabilities, that the military unit runs out of time and ends up ordering parts as an emergency basis, paying 100 or 1,000 times more. They said, we just received a part from the DOD for evaluation for reverse engineering that is part of the Air Force weapon system. We did some research and discovered that a very large OEM has been selling that same asset for approximately $697 each. This part is a screw-on cap called an electrical connector cover. We have located a commercial source for the asset and can purchase it today for less than $100. This might not sound like much, but imagine this same issue over and over and over and over in extremely large quantities. Representative Lamar Smith Republican San Antonio came by our offices a few months ago to learn of the situations like this. He confirmed this is a problem and vowed to help change the process, making the DOD more accountable, and tried to assist getting the DOD to utilize existing law and contract directly with small minority-owned companies like ours that can save taxpayers money. Common sense business practices would help us spend existing defense funds more wisely, grow small business jobs, and make our country safer. You know, I did make a phone call just to verify this was legit. It was a legit letter. This just wasn't something that was put out there. And Lamar Smith's office said, yes, this was legit. So, what does that tell us?
A lot of fraud.
A lot of waste. A lot of fraud and a lot of waste.
And I remember some years ago I was at an event and I talked to some people that worked in Washington, and they said that the defense contractors just do everything they can to charge as much as possible.
Yeah.
Or they deliberately underestimate how much something's going to cost, and then they present you with a bill that's substantially higher. And I think there's a tremendous amount of fraud. Obviously, weapon systems that you don't need. I think there is so much fraud and waste. And yet, when to me the thing most essential to our security comes up, which is our border security, all of a sudden they cry poor. I mean, they can't foot a couple $1 billion and start building the wall, but like they give out billions of dollars like candy to the defense contractors who fight in wars thousands of miles away, when they won't secure our borders or vet people that come to the country from countries that have a lot of terrorism or instability.
Correct.
Bill, you'd almost think it's a rigged game. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Here's the thing you got to couple with this, Brian and Ken and everyone. There was a Gallup poll that was done. I had pulled this and hadn't used it, and when I started reading this letter, I started scrambling, trying to find my old notes, and I found them. Back in March, I'm sorry, it was February. Back in February, Gallup did a poll. And in that poll, 37% of those polled said the military and defense spending was too little. 31% said too much. They say 37% say spends too little on defense, 31% too much. 62% of the Republicans, 15% of the Democrats say too little spent on defense. 15% of the Democrats agreed with that. And
what'd you say the percent was, the people that thought we were spending too little?
Too little is 37%. Too much, 31%.
The way I interpret that is 37% of the people that were polled are suckers. I mean,
And I think the 31% may be right also in saying that it was too much. We just need to spend it more wisely, like this letter says.
Yeah, and wisely could mean why aren't we securing our borders? Remember that whole philosophy we're fighting them there. This is when I really started really just losing faith in the two-party system, when we were always hearing, we're fighting them over there so we won't come over here. But then it was like, we fight them over there, we destabilize their country, and then they want to come here, and anybody that wants to come here can come here. So I thought to myself, well, that doesn't make sense, because if you really didn't want them to come here, then wouldn't you have secure borders? And we have seen, by the way, that if you want secure borders, it's very achievable. Hungary has secure borders. They don't have any of the economic migrants, mostly, military-age males, not families, not Christians that are being persecuted or religious minorities. But they don't have that problem with the migrants coming into Hungary. Now, why is that?
Yeah.
Because they have big border fencing, which we're told doesn't work.
Yeah.
Somehow it works for Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow Hungary, who probably spends a fraction of probably 1/1000th of the amount of money on their defense, is probably more safe and secure than we are.
And I tell you what, it is one beautiful place, and it is clean. It is spotless. I mean, the people there, the cities, the towns, the streets, the squares, even though it's tourist ridden, you don't see a bit of litter. I saw one paper cup on the sidewalk when my wife and I were there last year, and I was going over there to pick it up, and there was a lady that had a briefcase in her hand that worked in that building, bent over, picked it up, and put it in the litter can. I mean, you don't see that here. They just kick it to the side or step on it so it don't blow, But anyway, here's some more numbers here. In this same survey, 44% of the people said that our defense is not strong enough. Okay? Just over 10% said it was too strong. Kind of weird. And then there was those that said, these were all adults in this particular poll here, 57% of the U.S. people here that were polled said militarily we are number one in the world. 20% said we were economically number one in the world. When asked which area we were stronger in, 57 said military, 20% said economically. So defense is something that's on a lot of people's mind, and I guess it should be. I mean, we need to protect ourselves, I guess. But the bottom line is, are we secure? Are we secure? I think we are to a certain degree. I think we need to, one thing I can say about Trump, I do like the fact that he wants to secure our borders. That's been a pet peeve of mine for so long. It's unreal. We need to keep our border secure. If you can't keep people from coming in, it's hard to keep them from doing the things they want to do. And just a pure, simple way of putting it. Brian, what else you got on defense right now before we move on?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't have secure borders, to me, you don't have a defense. Your national defense isn't worth a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's everything. If you don't have secure borders and you don't believe in securing your borders, well, first off, you're not even a country, and second off, you're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's, to me, I'm much more concerned about securing our borders than some other countries in the Middle East. It just doesn't make sense unless you look at the United States as an empire, because countries have borders. Empires don't have borders because they're always looking to increase their territory. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just the way we think of it. I like to think of America as a country. Other people probably don't view it that way, and they look at borders as an impediment to their goals. Mm-hmm. That's my last statement on that.
Okay. Well, I tell you, that's a pretty good statement. Okay. Well, there were. I saw another chart the other day that I kept, and this was how the federal government spends $3.95 trillion. And I found these a little staggering. 24% of that goes to Social Security, 15% goes to Medicare, 13% to health, 13% to income security, 5% veterans benefits, 3% with an asterisk mark, education, which includes training, employment and social services, things like that. 15% national defense, 6% net interest, and 6% other, whatever other may be. So, if you look at that, it's pretty well spread out. And it makes me think that some areas you may want to shift some of that money around. Just, being the non-expert that I am, looks like that might be something you may want to consider. But, no one's asked me. So anyway, I give you my opinion. So, all right. Well, Brian, what else you got on your mind?
Well, what else do I have on my mind? You're talking about the budget, and I think one of the things I'm going to be curious to see is when the final budget comes out, how much money is allocated for border security. Apparently, the Democrats are willing to go to the wall over it. And so, are the Republicans going to use their majority to their advantage? And because if they're united in wanting border security, then it won't matter what the Democrats want to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this vote will tell us a lot. And again, is it going to be a budget where we have funding for Planned Parenthood, for a border wall, and lots of funding to secure countries' borders in the Middle East? I mean, again, these are the kinds of things that just make me nuts. And this is why so many people look at the two parties as Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And that's why they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would think, with the type of stuff being proposed with the budget, that Hillary Clinton won the election and not Donald Trump.
One of the things I also want to mention, and Neil beat me to it here. Thank you, Neil. You reminded me when I saw your note here. Over $233 billion goes to our national debt. And, $233 billion national debt. That's why Repubs say they will use 51 votes to pass budget, discuss Planned Parenthood budget. And they have the audacity to come back and say that they would like to raise our debt limit. I flinch when we spend too much at a restaurant. I have this thing in my mind, Brian, Dave, Neil, everybody. I got this picture in my mind that when you go out and eat dinner at a restaurant, or if you go out and have dinner and a couple of adult beverages, that it shouldn't exceed X dollars. And of course, that X dollars depends on where you go, your ability to spend the money on such luxuries. But being just the two of us, we eat out probably more than average. And and I there's this breaking point where I don't know. Let's say, well, we went to that restaurant already once this week. How about a McDonald's burgers? No, I hate McDonald's burgers. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But, I think that we need to do the same thing in our national budget. We need to start thinking about when's too much and when it's not too much. Do we really need this or we don't? Anyway, no personal opinion. All right, off the budget. Okay, Brian. Hey, dude, I appreciate you being here this morning. And you're always welcome. Now, do you have any other words of wisdom on this topic before we change it?
No, I just, again, I think that border wall and border security, I think, is really important. And I know even a lot of people that voted for Trump dismiss the idea of a border wall, but I think we've seen enough examples where that works. The Vatican, Hungary, whatever they're doing in Poland and the Czech Republic, walls do work. If walls and fences didn't work, then a lot of the super rich people and oligarchs that want open borders and are opposed to a wall wouldn't live behind a gated fence themselves.
Have you ever been to the Vatican?
I have not.
Okay. Walls do work there. Those walls are not 12,000 miles long, and they got armed guards at every entry, and you can see them from one entry to the next. I mean, that's what makes that wall so successful.
So let me ask you a question then. if that's the case, then why isn't it that why wouldn't we have a big border wall where you can put the wall,
Yeah.
and with armed guards around it, like
Uh-huh.
they can do that around the Vatican,
or use technology and have some other means. I mean, say, face it, we do have technology out there that might help us, and I'm sure they're going to incorporate that. I mean, they'd be foolish if they didn't.
Here's a question for you, Bill. George Soros is one of the big. You think it's fair to say he's one of the biggest open border advocates in the world, correct?
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think the odds are that on George Soros, wherever he lives, that his property, that he lives behind a big wall / gated fence, and that he has security guards there?
I don't know where he lives. It'd be an interesting.
What are the odds?
The odds are, no matter where he lives, I would guarantee you, I would bet money on, no matter where he lives, there is ample security.
So maybe what we ought to do is all these oligarchs that are pouring billions of dollars.
Move them, scatter them out about every 10 miles apart along the border.
Yeah, well, or what we could do is we could say to them, all right, you don't believe in border walls. You think it's inhumane, blah, 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 this and that. Well, then the huge properties and mansions you live on, Bill Gates, all these other people, then you shouldn't be able to live behind a gate or border wall and have security guards protecting your property.
Uh-huh.
It's good for the goose, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
This is good for the gander. So if border walls and fences and gates are such a terrible idea at the borders, then they shouldn't be able to live behind border walls. And if they don't believe we should be able to allocate more funding for border patrol guards or whatever else, then they shouldn't have security guards.
Uh-huh. You mean what's good for the goose is good for the gander again? You know that old saying?
Yeah. Or that big Bilderberg meeting every year, which is no big deal because all the world leaders in politics and media, academia, and the business community, I'm sure they just get together for 3 days every year, surrounded by security guards shutting down whole cities. I'm sure they're just there to talk about their golf game. And the next time they have one of their big contests, then they shouldn't be able to have security guards around them and bodyguards because after all, we're not allowed to have border patrol guards and people patrolling and keeping our borders safe, so that they shouldn't be able to enjoy that kind of protection.
Yeah. Well, you know how that goes, Brian. I got the money, honey.
And how about the refugees? All these people that with billions of all these billionaires and George Soros funding the NGOs, which are literally patrolling economic migrants into Italy and places like that. If they believe so strongly in it, why aren't they adopting all kinds of children from the Middle East themselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, people got to understand this wall project. I still have a hard time believing that some people really do still believe that wall is going to be one continuous solid wall from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean in San Diego. That is not going to happen, folks. I don't care what you hear, what you think you understand. That is not going to happen. Trust me, I've been down Highway 10. I've been down within virtually 100 yards, several hundred miles along that southern border. When my wife and I made our trek from San Diego to Santa Fe, Mexico, then back up to Albuquerque, then up to Santa Fe, and then all the way back to Los Angeles. We did that southern route, and we were in view of the border a good majority of the way. And, believe me, there's a lot of area out there that technology could do the trick. You don't have to have a human being there. You just have to have a human being watching and observing the technology to make sure that it's working and do something about it when they see somebody trying to violate it. But, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I know everybody thinks that big, beautiful wall would be great. I still put my money on it. there's not going to be no huge wall that far. You're going to have some walls here. You're going to have some walls there. You're going to have some fences. You're going to have some places you may not have anything except something with a camera on it or something. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, my opinion.
But, it is interesting, Bill. Again, we just went through the whole defense budget thing that you were talking about, and there's hundreds of billions of dollars. A lot of it's for wasteful spending on defense, and yet, $5 billion, which could be so much for border security, all of a sudden they cry poor. There's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy going on here.
Yeah.
And lying.
Well, you know what I say, Brian, over and over and over for as long as I can remember. Welcome to the world of politics.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of politics.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, and how about, I'm sure George Bush, the Obamas, the Clintons, border walls don't work. Well, the properties they live on, I'm sure, again, they live behind big gated fences themselves with guards. Not unlike what you would have with a border wall and border patrol guards. So if we can't have it at the border, then they shouldn't be able to have it to protect their properties and protect themselves. And walls do work. Walls do absolutely work. It's a lie to say it doesn't work, because if it doesn't work, then how is Hungary keeping the invasion out of their country?
Well, walls do work. Walls do work. A lot of security things work, Brian, but, again, you got to have the people, you got to have the technology to observe it and make sure they work, and what if they don't work? You got to have a response team, and like Neil said in the chat room earlier, he said, design, the wall will be designed to make people go to where you can get to them after detection. That's a good comment right there. So anyway, all right, goodness.
It's achievable to secure the borders if you want to. It's just amazing, all these things that we can do with technology today, all the money we can spend, all these different things. But all of a sudden, when it comes to border security, it's like, well, it's just an impossibility. Either the money's not there, or you can't or you can't defend your borders. But you can do all these other things. Just where's that American can-do spirit when it comes to building?
It has nothing to do with can-do spirit, Brian. It has absolutely nothing to do with can-do spirit. It comes to the greed, the political games, and me against you. That's all it's about. And no one will ever convince me differently. It is one of those king of the hill type situations, the tug of war. And they're playing for tug of war. They got somebody standing on the coastline of San Diego. They got someone in McAllen, Texas, and they are pulling that tug of war. And in between time, people are crawling underneath that rope.
You can put a man on the moon, but you can't secure the border.
It's amazing. It is amazing. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you calling in today and taking part in the conversation. You're always welcome. Glad to have you from Pennsylvania calling in. All right, folks. Well, I tell you what, I'm getting hoarse. I didn't even stop to drink, but maybe one or two. Swallows of water. Normally I go through two of those big old 20-ounce glasses there. But thank y'all for being here this morning in the Pickle Barrel. We did have a lot of discussion. Neil, Guy, I love your comments. Thank you for being so loyal and being in there every day. I appreciate you greatly. Dave, your contribution is always welcome. And I invite all of you to come back in here. Tomorrow is, good gosh, it is, isn't it? Tomorrow's Friday. Woo, this week went by fast. But Freaky Friday, I'm sure we'll find something freaky to talk about. We're going to get off this defense thing for a few days. I got to rest my mind. But we'll be back here tomorrow morning in the Pickle Barrel at AmericanPatriotRadio.com, where we'll continue our discussions on issues and problems of the day. And hopefully we'll even drag some good things into the conversation. I like doing that. But other than that, that's where we're at right now. So y'all have a good day, good evening. We'll see you in the morning. Dave, what's coming up next, sir?
Still yet to come.
Oh, Dave, I got to interrupt you. This is the quietest I've seen you in a long time.
Well, I didn't want to do a 6-hour show.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yanking your chain. Appreciate you, Dave. Go ahead.
Still yet to come on today for AmericanPatriotRadio.com. Kids Corner, Happy Hour with Candy, and Chuck Scholl's Golden Age of Radio. So stay tuned. No reason to change that dial and spread the word. Join us in the chat room, as the chat room is always open at AmericanPatriotRadio.com.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Everyone have a great day. We'll catch you tomorrow. Adios until tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. You've been in the Pickle Barrel with author, speaker, commentator, and show host, Bill Pickle.
You are listening to American Patriot Radio.